I have a dream, oh, I have a dream. Red, white, and blue, fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Changing Times. Oh, we got an echo here. Let's just stop for a second and we'll start over again.
Again.
Again. They're going to fix it. Our amazing producer had a birthday this week, and he's going to take care of this problem, and it's fixed. So,
all right.
Welcome to Changing Times.
Yes, I tell you what, Don, this is show number 69, 1 week, 1 year, and 17 shows, and we are in Springfield, Missouri, the Axe Media Group's headquarters, July the 27th. Can you believe that, guys?
So hard to believe.
So the next show will be in August, and I'm hoping August won't be quite as hot as July. We're going to have another 100-plus day. I'm the weatherman every Wednesday, and it has been hot. Hopefully we'll get a cool down maybe, and maybe we'll get some rain. St. Louis got too much rain, didn't they? 10 or 12 inches of rain can cause a problem in one day. So anyway, we are live, and we're going to have a great program today. We've got a great guest, and we'll be introducing her in just a few moments. A friend of mine that I've known for quite a while, and I am Lynn Morris.
And I'm Don Blackard.
And I'm welcome back. I tell you what,
Thank you.
we missed you last week. Louis Michael did a great job, and I understand you're going to be gone next week and out of town, and so we'll have another co-host in, and we'll either have Faith Zimmer or we'll have Louis Michael back.
That'll be great.
If we don't have those back, I'll do it by myself. But anyway, we're going to do that, and let's talk about our calendar. The only thing there's all kinds of things always going on, but nobody sent me anything. So the only thing I really know, next Tuesday, August the 2nd, is a very important primary election all over the state of Missouri. I know Arkansas just had their primary, but Missouri is just now going to have their primary next Tuesday. Extremely important. A lot of people don't think it's important to vote in a primary, just vote in the general elections. I'm telling you, the primary is so important because there are so many races decided right there in the primary that don't even have a general opponent. And then you want the best person to win the primary to go into the general. So I'm just asking everyone to please go out and vote. Vote for the best person that you feel. Do your research. Look around and ask people who the best person is and make sure. And of course, I'm running for presiding commissioner, and I just always feel like as a state rep or as an Eastern commissioner now, the best thing you have going for you is the local people. You have influence on the local people. We have very little influence on U.S. Senator or U.S. Congress or the president. We don't have a lot of influence on them, but we definitely have influence on the local people. They'll listen to you and try to help you. So,
and Lynn, you wholeheartedly have my vote. So I am so just looking forward to you being the commissioner.
Well, I feel real good about it, but we're going to see. That's the final poll. That's the only poll that counts. At the end of the day on Tuesday, August the 2nd, I'll be sitting in my most comfortable chair with my wife and my pets, and I'm going to be watching the votes come in.
That's great.
So what else?
So we have Faith Zimmer is part of Adamant Faith. They're a up-and-coming band out of Springfield, and they are going to be at the fairgrounds, Springfield, Missouri, this Sunday at 7:30.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so we've seen, Faith has been here, and we interviewed her, and she sung songs. She writes songs, and she sings songs. They're just adamant. They're just really great people.
Yes, the whole band is extremely talented, as we both went to their concert here recently.
So the Ozark Empire Fair, I think, starts Friday night. I think it's this Friday night. Runs for about a week. I'd recommend everyone go to the fair, eat a foot-long corn dog and a jug of A&W root beer. You can't beat that kind of stuff, and then look around at all the stuff that's going on. So that'll be fun. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Our guest today is someone that I've known for quite some time, Caroline Giamaco. So how are you doing?
I am doing well today.
I tell you what, we're glad to have you here. So I know a little bit about you. We need to let the people know. You are a public educator.
I am.
And you are an author. that's what I thought Dawn will really enjoy this, because she loves to write books, and I know she's going to be writing more books too. And then also you worked in a prison, maximum security men's prison in Jefferson City.
In Licking.
In Licking, Missouri. But you had a government contract where you were a citizen coming into the prisons to teach, or what? How was that?
I was hired by the state.
By the state.
And I was a Department of Corrections employee, just like anybody else. In fact, I could write inmates up. I could basically do anything that a corrections officer would, as far as keeping discipline and things like that. I was an academic teacher 3 in the system because I had so many years of experience. I came in at the top level of what they offer teachers. And unfortunately, that was still pay-wise, in case anybody's wondering, it was only $1,800 more than the entry-level out of high school corrections officer made. So,
well, and that's one of the stories that we talked about before the show started, was talking about the pay scale of teachers, whether it's in a prison or whether it's in a public school. I mean, it's really pretty pathetic, and we need to do something about it. We've talked about it for a long time. I know last year the legislators were trying to, and I think even the governor wanted to raise the salary level, but I don't think it got passed.
Well, I think it did
it?
Get raised. The base got raised to $32,000 a year, but the problem with that is that funding is only good for those people coming in as their first year. It did nothing for somebody in their second, third, fourth, fifth up the salary schedule to make more. And so districts are having to find ways to try to abate that problem, because part of the reason why Governor Parson wanted to raise teacher salaries, which is commendable, is he wanted to recruit and retain teachers. Mm-hmm. And so it might recruit somebody to come in at $32,000, but if they know that for the next 8 years on their salary schedule, they're not going to be making more than $32,000, because it took until working 8 years to get to $32,000 in some districts, you're not going to retain people. And people who've worked for 8 years are possibly going to say, why should I make the same thing as some kid coming in out of college?
Yeah,
so
I understand. That's a big problem. And obviously, that's why teachers end up working 2 or 3 jobs, and it's just not a good thing. Well, let's just gears a little bit, because here's a book writer and a book writer. And so let Dawn talk about some of the books that you've written and why you decided you wanted to write books.
Well, you wrote a book called Banknotes. Do you want to tell them about what that's all about?
Yeah, I may as well jump into the soup right away with that. When I was teaching at the South Central Correctional Center in 2012, I needed to hire an inmate tutor because my other one left. He took a higher paying job at MVE. And among the candidates was a gentleman named Keith Giammanco. And we instantly knew, you know how sometimes you run into people where you just hit it off. And it's not like, oh, hey, baby. No, it's just like, wow, this person is really interesting to talk to. And that's how we both felt. And so I ended up being able to hire him. And he had worked for me for a couple of months. And he actually, he was very low key, never said anything about what he was in for. Now, he did tell me during the interview that he was in for robbing banks, but he didn't try to glorify anything. And a few months in, a kid, one of the young guys in class, came up and he was like, oh, you know you are. Just admit it. Just admit it. You know you are. And Keith kept telling him, no, just go back to your seat and do your work. And the kid wouldn't stop. And so finally Keith said, I'm way too high profile to lie about why I'm in here. So tell your family to Google me and you'll know what I'm in here for. So just go back to your seat and do your classwork. So after the kid walked away, I looked at him and I said, what was that about? And he said, oh, the kid thinks I'm a chomo, a child molester. I'm like, why? And he said, well, middle-aged white guy, no previous criminal record. Look around in the classroom. Who are they? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can see. And he said, so I get that a lot. And I said, were you really high profile? And he said, well, I was on the front page of USA Today and on Good Morning America. And all of a sudden, it clicked in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, you're the Boonie Hat Bandit. and he had robbed 12 banks in the St. Louis area using notes. That's why the book is called Bank Notes. It's a play on words with currency and him using notes. And he had refused to talk to anybody about his reasons behind it. And the longer we worked together, the more the idea formed. It started as a joke because he's a terrible speller. He's brilliant, but he cannot spell. And he was taking a college class, and so was my other tutor, and I would go over their work and proofread. And I told him, I said, if you ever decide to write a book or a screenplay or anything, you might want to have me edit it before you do anything. He goes, we will. And it went from me editing it to deciding that this story needs to be told, because we were kind of living in parallel universes, because he ended up robbing banks because of the Great Recession. He'd lost everything. He was desperate. He had a foreclosure notice, $50 in his wallet, and he was the sole custody of 2 twin girls. And he felt desperate. He didn't know what to do. I had been a public school teacher all this time. My dad was a deputy, and working inside a maximum security men's prison was the last thing I expected to be doing. He never expected to be an inmate in a maximum security prison. And the recession was the reason why I had to look for a job there, because my school district at the time had reduced population and it just couldn't support having 4 full-time English teachers. I was the last one hired. I didn't have tenure yet. So I was one of the budget cuts. And that's how I ended up working at the Department of Corrections, because I didn't want to give up teaching. But teaching jobs were really hard to find during that time because people were afraid to retire or leave their jobs. So they were staying. And that brought us both together. So the perspective of what was going on inside the prison system, as 2 middle-class people who didn't have any connection to prison before. A lot of times people in prison, they've got friends from their neighborhood, they've got relatives who've been in prison or are in prison, and they're like, oh, hey, Joe, how are you doing and everything. Neither of us knew anybody in prison. And so we were looking at it as just the regular citizen taxpayer at the stuff that was going on inside the system. And so Banknotes tells Keith's story of how he became a notorious bank robber after being the guy next door, and what happened, what the process was as he went through prison, and the types of things that he experienced in county jail and in the maximum security prison setting. And then later in the book, there are a few chapters from my perspective as well. I wasn't going to put them in there, and Keith said, you have to, you're part of this story now. So you have to be in there too. And that's really where I started speaking out the most about the need for criminal justice reform. Was I saw corruption, I saw waste, and I saw lack of rehabilitation happening in inmates, and it's called the Department of Corrections. And you would think that that would mean they're fixing people. And my son came for a tour of the prison one time. He was on leave from the Air Force, and he was security forces. And so he understood jails and prisons and things like that. And so he went to the prison. We happened to talk to one of the assistant wardens when we first got there, and her name was Tarina Ballinger. And since Rick was stationed in Europe, they were talking about the 2 different systems. And Rick said, in Europe, they look at it totally different. They feel like unless you're a serial killer, about the most you're going to get is 17 years. And then their jails are set up and their prisons are set up completely different. And Tarina Ballinger laughed and said, "We don't even try to fix anyone here." And that stopped me in my tracks. And that was before I ever met, no, it was right after I met Keith. So it's not as though he filled my head with anything. I'd been seeing things for a long time because I'd worked there for a year whenever he started working for me. So I'd seen plenty already, and I'd had death threats that nothing were done about and things like that. And I thought, wow, she made a mistake of saying that in front of me, because especially since I came from a law enforcement background, I know how it's supposed to be. And I was kind of like Scout Finch when I was a kid. I sat in on courtroom hearings and things like that because I was there around the sheriff's office and the courthouse. And I thought, this is not the way this system is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be funny to one of the leaders of one of these facilities that they're not doing anything to fix people, because those same inmates are getting out and are coming back to our communities. And the recidivism rate is 68%, and that's the Department of Corrections' own numbers. If we failed 68% of the time with any of our jobs, would we expect to keep our jobs? Or would we expect somebody to say, hey, you need to step it up and do better? But there's a contentment to not do anything. Some people enjoy the idea that inside the prison system, it should be as miserable as possible. People should be getting raped. People should be getting, stabbed. I had legislators, when I'd go to talk to them about it, actually tell me, well, it's prison, so you can't really expect anything different. And that was talking about the conditions that the staff was going through. And I'm like, no, it's not good enough to say, oh, well, that's prison, so it was an awful job, so you should just expect it to be bad. Because our safety out here in our communities depends on what happens in there. Because if they allow a Lord of the Flies mentality to rule inside the prison system, and then add the other layer of staff corruption that can happen, that makes life miserable for the good employees and also makes inmates more dangerous, when they get out, it could be you, it could be me, it could be your grandma, it could be anybody who becomes the next victim that creates that 68% recidivism rate where they're sent back to prison, because that means they're out committing more crime. And usually people increase the level of what crime they commit. Very seldom do you have somebody who killed someone go out and then go to prison for check fraud. It usually starts off the check fraud, and then after they've been in the system for long enough, they're broken people. And when they've been taunted by certain corrupt employees, which makes life a whole lot more dangerous for the good, decent people, and they're trying to do their job, it develops a level of animosity that then comes out on the street.
Hey, Carolyn.
Yes.
So when did you write that book?
It was published in 2015.
2015. 22, 7 years later, do you think our prison systems in Missouri is any better?
No.
And we've got people in all 50 states. We've got people around the world watching us today, right now. And I'm just challenging people for what you're going to be hearing today, that if you've got some of these same issues in your state, you need to do something about it. And you need to step up and tell people about it. And how do people get that first book? Is that on Amazon? Is that in bookstores?
It's on Amazon. And in the coming months, I will have an updated version of it. And I'll probably call it Banknotes Revisited, The True Story of the Booney Hat Bandit.
Okay.
And that was the whole reason for us writing the book, because we didn't need to glorify Keith's crimes. But since he was nationally known, we figured, why not use that to get people's attention, to get them to read the book, to go, oh, wow, I didn't know that's how our prison system was operating. And it's really a call to action for government officials and citizens to start demanding better of a system that we pay for in more ways than one. Because I think last year the budget for the Department of Corrections was something horrendous, like $825 million, almost $1 billion, when we spend $1.2 billion on K through 12 education in this state.
Right.
So we're spending a whole lot more on a system that's making a horrible product than we are.
Well, I agree.
Lynn, before our break, I just want to say, Lynn and I applaud you, and we always talk about difference makers. But not only did you go into the prison to, make fruit of education, which is really the key of anybody bettering themselves at all, comes back to education. But not only did you go in and educate those individuals, but you're a big picture person. So when you write a book, it allows for that bigger picture and more awareness. And so you are a difference maker, and we're just really thankful you're on the show today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And like Dawn says, she always tells people, if you're being the change, then that's a real difference maker. And so we appreciate that. We're going to just spend just a few minutes on our sponsors. That's what we always do. So our first sponsor that Don and I are extremely proud of is Brad Pistow. He's a certified fiduciary financial planner right in Ozark, Missouri. And I tell you what, he is my financial planner. I do all my retirement planning through Brad Pistow. He's actually known all over the country. He's a contributor to USA Today. He's written books. Safe Money Matters is his #1 best-selling Amazon retirement planning book. And then he also wrote a book published in December, same time Dawn published her book, and it's called Bulletproof. And so he has some plans where you never lose $1 of your investments. So as the stock market has gone down, I haven't lost any money. Not $1 have I lost. And so really good, safe, secure plans for retirement. Never too early to start thinking about retirement. His telephone number is 417 area code. Get the pencil and paper ready. 417-581-9222. 417-581-9222. And Lisa or Hunter will answer the phone. They'll send you information. He's licensed in Missouri, Arkansas, and Kansas. Don't worry about the other 47 states. He's got friends in all 47 other states because he goes around the country speaking, and he will get you hooked up with the right person that will help you just like he does in those 3 states. But I highly recommend Brad Pistow.
My family uses him too, we found out. So.
Yeah, it's just an amazing deal. I met him by name only when when Jan and I were vacationing in Florida, and I saw one of his articles on USA Today, and I said, we were just thinking about, we had to change our 401ks and put them into a retirement plan. He just appeared, God just made him in Ozark, Missouri. I just can't believe it. So it's just really a cool story. Our second sponsor, Youngblood Motor Group in Springfield, Missouri, longest acting family-owned car business in the Southwest Missouri area, 43 plus years. John Youngblood and John Whitaker. My last 2 Grand Cherokees were bought from those guys, and I'll be buying my 3rd car from them, maybe possibly. Caroline, John Whitaker was sitting right where you were, and he's talking about this electric car that Nissan has that you don't have to go recharge it at a charging station. It has its own generator, and so it automatically goes back and forth. And so while you're using gasoline, the generator is being recharged, and when it gets recharged, then it goes back to the electric. And I'm thinking, well, that's my electric car. If I was going to buy an electric car, then that's the kind I would buy. I don't have time to be searching out and sitting there watching that car get charged up. My whole day is a lot more active than that. So I was thinking this will be interesting when I trade my next Jeep in. But anyway, they're a good group. They're on South Campbell Street. They have new cars on one side, Nissan Kias on one side, and they have about 250 used cars. I mean, that's the market right now. A lot of people can only afford to buy a used car. A lot of their cars are program cars and certified cars, used cars, and so that's the way to buy them. So I highly recommend Youngblood Motor Group, 3525 South Campbell. Their phone number is 3838, 417-882-3838. And the cool thing about them is they've got a 72-hour guarantee. They actually will deliver your car to your driveway, and you can put everybody, put your wife, put the family, put the dogs, put everybody everywhere in the car. And you got 72 hours to drive it around, see if that's the right car. If that's not the right car, they'll bring you another car. But nobody else does that. Nobody else does that type of service. I just had my car serviced, and again, always it's very good. And it was washed and dried off, and just a beautiful car.
Yep,
So,
and they're very generous to the community. They give back in so many
yeah.
ways.
Oh yeah, so we love them, and both our first two sponsors have been on our show. Our last sponsor, Louis Michael, he's our newest sponsor. He was our co-host last week. He's a realtor for the firm, FIRM, in Ozark, Missouri. His phone number, Louis Michael, is 417-988-1086. 417-988-1086. And he sells new homes. He helps you buy homes, and he'll help you sell a home. And I'm telling you what, he's always working. Every time I call him on his cell phone, he's out there selling a home or selling some land somewhere, but he will call you back. And he's just a great guy. And then while he was on our show last week as a co-host, he's an Elvis impersonator. He is a very, very good Elvis impersonator. Won awards when there's 250 people competing for the same prize. He would win first place at those, traveled over the world, actually being an Elvis impersonator. And he'll do a party. So we're going to have a block party anytime he sells a home. Or helps you buy a home. If you want to have a block party to meet all your neighbors, he's going to have an Elvis party at the home.
That's great.
We threw that in as a little perk for all the people out there and stuff like that. And then he is just such a nice man. He is trying to help people prevent suicides and taking their lives and actually knowing that life is important and there's a purpose in life. He almost ended his life one time, and he's fought depression all his life. And he has a great organization called Choosing to Live. Choosing to Live, a great nonprofit organization. And so we're really proud of our sponsors.
Yes.
So I think we can go back into our show now. And Don, what's the second book that we wanted to talk about?
We want to talk about Guilty Hearts. So tell us all about that one, how you were inspired for that.
Okay, so when Banknotes came out, I started doing Barnes & Noble book signings everywhere from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to Oklahoma City. So I went several places, and usually the reaction when they found out that Keith and I were a couple now, at first they'd look at me really funny, like there was something wrong with me. And then as they talked to me for a while and found out what we were about, then their attitude changed to be kind of like, well, you and Keith are okay, but it's those other crazy people who are, who love an inmate. Like the crazy cat ladies out there who are so beaten down emotionally and starved for attention that they'll be involved with an inmate. Well, as a general rule, that's not what happens. Are there those people? Yeah, of course. You've got people who are desperate, anything. They go to Tumblr and all kinds of things to seek somebody that's going to validate them. But for every person who is in prison, they have a circle. And I tell people, think about the circle of people that you're connected to. Your family, your friends, your church family, your workplace, where you do business usually. All those people are connected to you. So if you went to prison, all those people would become impacted. And most people do not go, oh, you know what? I'm going to seek out an inmate. They're married to somebody. It's their father, it's their son or daughter, their uncle who ends up incarcerated. And it wasn't part of the family plan to have that happen. And I wanted to highlight stories of several different families and couples on how they ended up in that situation so that people could see that it's not as strange as people think it is, because there's over 2 million people incarcerated in the United States right now. And so that's 2 million circles of people that are impacted by it. But as a teacher also, I have seen many times kids who believe that because their dad's in prison or their mom is in prison, that they're damaged goods and that they've got no other path in life but to end up in prison too, which isn't true. But society does that. Suddenly I've experienced this, you have somebody that you love and care about who's incarcerated, they start looking at you like you have eye stalks, or now they need to hide the silver from you, that kind of thing. I've had family members disown me because I'm married to Keith, where if they had met him when he was in his stock options trading days in his suit, they'd have thought, oh, that was a good catch. He's the same person. And I have had people say to me, well, I can't believe you're married to an inmate. And I say, I'm not. I'm married to my husband who happens to be incarcerated. And so I wrote Guilty Hearts to kind of shine some light on the stigma that society places on people who have loved ones who are incarcerated. And it does impact more than just that person, because I've known mothers who have been so traumatized about their son being in prison and losing friends over it and this, that, and the other thing, that they have emotional breakdowns. And so then their workplace suffers because now that person's not there to do their job. Or mothers who now already have enough on their plate because they're young mothers. The husband went to prison. Now it's a single income family, so they're having to work more. The kids now have less supervised time by a parent. And then you've got people going, well, no, you can't play with Johnny because, his family's bad. His dad went to prison. And that kind of stuff really happens. It's very destructive, because then you're making a self-fulfilling prophecy that there's something wrong with those people. And if kids grow up thinking that, what difference does it make because everybody thinks I'm bad news anyway, they don't have a whole lot of incentive to be good. And sometimes the adults in the situation just need somebody to just treat them like normal. Don't treat them as though there's something weird about them now. Treat them as just a regular person.
Yeah, I like how you're shining the light on these unpopular subjects and, just really showing people the light of what it is. And what a phenomenal book title for marketing. Guilty Hearts, that just fits that perfectly.
Because at the end of it, I talk about how the guilt is placed, like throughout the book, I talk about how the guilt is placed on the family members for loving somebody, because a lot of people expect you just to cut ties and throw them away. And that then goes back around to the recidivism problem. If somebody gets out of prison and they don't have any close family ties anymore, or friend ties, if they don't have a positive network, they don't have anybody to be good for. And that also makes them more likely to repeat crime. And in a seminar that I went to when I worked for the Department of Corrections, they said that the number one leading indicator on whether or not somebody will be successful at staying out of prison for 5 years is if they have a strong, positive social network waiting for them at home. And so if society says, oh, you just need to break ties, just divorce them, don't have anything to do with them, just act like your dad doesn't exist anymore, that actually hurts that very person who's telling them to do that, because somebody's dad, somebody's husband then could be getting out and harming them or their family. And so at the end of Guilty Hearts, I say that, I ask the question, who really has the guilty hearts in this situation? Is it the people who have been determined to maintain a connection to somebody that they love? Or is it society that's really guilty for doing this?
Caroline, I think there's a lot of issues in society, certainly about our prison system. And so let's talk about the book that I had you on our radio show a few years ago, Inside the Death Fences. Was that your number one bestseller, or
Banknotes and Inside the Death Fences have done the best.
Have done the best.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraging people, as you listen to this program today, if you have any interest whatsoever, and you should have some interest in prison reform, you need to buy these books. You need to buy these books. They can go on Amazon and buy them and do that. How would people get a hold of you if they want to find out more information?
They can contact me on Facebook. It's Caroline Giammanco Author is my regular personal page. And then I have a Caroline Giammanco Author fans page. They can email me at carolinegiammanco@gmail.com. And so I know Giammanco is kind of a mouthful, but I think you have my name on
Yeah,
the
we do.
information for this show,
Yeah,
so
they're-
people
they're
can see
watching
it there.
They're seeing it. So just we don't have much time left, but about 10 minutes. So let's talk about that book, Inside the Death Fences. That is really a compilation of what you saw when you were working as a state employee, right?
Yes.
And then let's make sure we finish up with maybe a positive solution or two. You know what we could do better.
Yes.
It's a shame that we don't do some of those things.
Yeah. Somebody years and years ago when I was a teenager told me some good advice for workplace. Never complain about a problem. Never bring a problem to your boss unless you have a solution.
Correct. That's a good way to do it.
And that's the way I've always approached it. Just whining and complaining just leaves you with the same thing you've got. And so, yeah, Inside the Death Fences, I had written Keith's story. I had talked about other people's stories in Guilty Hearts. And finally, the time came where it's like, well, I think I need to talk about being the whistleblower on corruption inside the Department of Corrections. And I would like to point out, I'm still not on their Christmas card list. I'm still not one of their favorite people. And so I told my story of how I went from being small town public school teacher to teaching the GED program inside a maximum security men's prison. How when I went there for my pre-hire drug screening, I had been hired, but before you can start work, you have to go in and be drug screened. The officer who was conducting that test, he looked at me after we chatted a little bit back and forth, and he said, you seem like a really nice lady. So I'm going to tell you something. He said, a lot of people will tell you that these inmates are silver-tongued devils, and they will say and do anything they can to manipulate you to get you to do what they want you to. But you need to know that some of the employees are just as bad. And he said, sometimes the only way you can tell the difference between the employees and the inmates is the color of the uniform that they wear. And unfortunately, that proved to be true. And so I think as far as solutions go, because there are many problems inside the prison system, and sometimes people just throw up their hands and say, it's just too big. There's just too much of it. We can't do anything. And I know it's been suggested that, well, you start with a little piece and you do that, and then you fix something else. That's not going to work with this problem. You need a different mindset from the top. And I like to compare it to Lee Iacocca taking over Chrysler. You have to go in from the top with somebody who says, we are going to do business differently than what we've done. And we are not going to allow this culture of fear amongst employees that keeps good people from speaking up, that keeps good people from doing what's supposed to be done because they're afraid of retaliation, because that happens. And one of the reasons why that happens is because there is no oversight over the Department of Corrections. I have talked to legislative offices that have told me that they have never received any information on any information requests that they have made to the Department of Corrections. That's uncalled for. When our sitting state representatives and senators are asking a state agency for information, that should be front and center. The information goes to those offices. Too many people in society, one of the reasons why it's like that is because the people who like to control the system that way know they're banking on the fact that most people don't think about prison on a daily basis. They don't think about the impact that's going to happen from the lack of rehabilitation and the hostile workplace environment that employees are in. So what happens is there's a blind eye, and there's nobody holding them accountable. And the Department of Corrections, is a self-policing entity. And one of the problems that I've had when talking to legislators about bringing about change is they're like, well, that's under the executive branch. We don't have any control over that. The legislature controls the purse strings. And if we're spending $825 million of our tax dollars on this agency, by golly, it needs to be on the up and up.
Sure.
And it needs to actually be doing the job that it's supposed to be doing. I am not saying that inmates should have chocolates and bonbons and, massages. That's not what I'm saying. Because there are people in there who have serious behavior issues and they need to be reformed. And Keith has said for years, anybody who doesn't want to follow the rules inside prison needs to go out and break rocks. And they need to break rocks until they decide they want to follow rules. Because most people who are there just want to do their time. They're not trying to cause trouble. But then you end up with the problem of the Lord of the Flies situation where you've got inmates, gangs, groups of inmates running entire housing units in prisons. And those people need to be put out and made to do something that they really don't like doing, like breaking rocks, until they decide, you know what, I think reform sounds like a really good idea. And we need to be paying attention to what the money is being spent on. We need to change our attitude about how we view incarcerating people in the first place. And it's not just a matter of go easy on drug crimes or anything like that, because I've heard that excuse from legislators too, that, we passed criminal reform last year. Well, it was a drug law or something like that. Drugs fuel violent crime. So a lot of the people who, if they want to help drug addicts, a lot of those people who went into prison for violent crimes, it was fueled by drugs in one way or another. The need to get money, drug trade, being high on drugs and doing something. It's not just, the nice suburban boy who got caught with a joint who needs to be taken lightly. What about the poor kid in the community who had to, he felt, rob the Circle K in order to get his drug money because he didn't have parents who were wealthy?
So, Carolyn, one of the things that I've heard, and I think you even talked about it before too, I think this is in your book about drugs to get into the prison system. I mean, so the prison to me looks like it's just another world. It's a world inside those fences, and so we probably have some employees selling drugs to the inmates. There's all kinds of things going on, isn't there?
Yes.
And honestly, there are so many things that could be improved. And I do believe it starts at the top. I believe it starts at the top. And we're all hoping and praying that someday, not years from now, but someday we can start revisiting and making our prison system to where when people do commit a crime, that they pay their time, but while they're paying their time, they're being re-educated, retooled, so they can go back out and be a positive citizen. Because I truly believe that most people want to be a positive citizen.
And Lynn, I just want to interject real quick. That's why I love the program my dad started, Renewed Treasures, because we take women when they get out of prison and we help them get jobs and the skill sets.
Yes,
and
that's what you got to do.
That is so important.
And we have just had such phenomenal people. One of our girls, I'm so proud of her. She came on the show, Lynn. You've heard her. Yes. She's been on your radio show. She just got a very big position at Bureau. And so to see someone that has been homeless, on drugs, in prison, now just changing lives and back into society. And it gives me a big, I want to say a big shout out to Bureau for like really hiring the right kind of people for what they're doing. But real quick, we have like 60 seconds left. And I want to say you have another book, Into the Night.
Yes.
Yes. And so we don't want to forget that book because that's a different avenue that you've went and worth checking out. So they can get that on Amazon as well.
Yes, they can. And it's my first fictional work. It's a collection of science fiction and paranormal short stories. And I told people that it was nice creating the monsters instead of having to write about the real ones.
Yeah,
Very
that's
good.
nice.
Very good. Hey, Caroline, thanks for being on there. Don't give up. Keep fighting for prison reform. Everyone out there, this was a tremendously important show today. Just kind of, we're not against the government. We just want the government to do the right things. Thanks for being on. We'll be on again next Wednesday, and I got to figure out what's going to be my show next week. But we'll have another great show, and we'll have another co-host, and we appreciate you being on today. And just know that you can watch this show on Acts Media Group's Facebook page 24 hours a day. You can watch this show or any show we've done on human trafficking or anything. And then we're also on 5 other social networks. And so just keep watching us and tell your friends. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.